I know I'm definitely not the only person who grew up with this idea that there was some distant, niche, super complicated money advice that I would eventually learn that would help me earn money exponentially and or save it that I hadn't figured out yet. And then that would solve all my money problems. Turns out I was wrong. And actually, the root of all my money problems was what I believed about money. You see, most of us were raised around fear-based messaging around money, especially if you grew up, let's say, in an immigrant household where saving money, budgeting, penny pinching, living frugally was the way and the most efficient and smart way to take control of your money. But frugality isn't always smart. Emphasis on isn't always. This is a very nuanced discussion, but likely if you're watching this, frugality is keeping you in a, for lack of better terms, low vibrational state that is stopping you from increasing your earning potential. Now, I'm not all woo-woo. Increasing your earning potential requires you to find ways to make more money. But there are some small beliefs that we have that definitely hinder us from, even when we do acquire more money or get on the path of doing that, hinder us from actually making the most out of it. So I definitely did not grow up in a low-income family. There is no super rags to riches story here. I grew up middle class in Ontario, Canada. I had a good life. I never had to worry about food on the table. I knew that there would always be food. I never experienced as a kid worrying about that or trying to save money for my parents or anything like that. Obviously, that doesn't mean my parents were rich, but the middle class is definitely still living paycheck to paycheck. I don't think that's controversial to say, but I didn't struggle in that sense. The money beliefs that were kind of taught to me, just perceiving the people around me and obviously hearing my parents talk and just living my life, were poor. So I, as an example, expensive, bad, cheap, good. That's something that really took a while to unlearn, but expensive doesn't always mean bad. Expensive sometimes mean better quality, long lasting, which will actually save you money in the long run. Instead of buying the cheap shoe, buy the more expensive shoe with the better quality because it will last you many, many years. So every 2 years, you don't have to buy a new pair of shoes, right? That's not always the case now. Unfortunately, we live in the world where just because something expensive doesn't mean it's good, but I'm not here to talk about that. What I'm here to talk about is the underlying belief. And if you have these black and white underlying poor beliefs, then it will infiltrate every area of your mind and it will hold you back from making more money or saving more money or whatever your goals are. Even to this day, for example, I will hear friends or family members kind of separate themselves from things that are abundant. That could never be me. They'll look at someone going on an expensive vacation or someone in a really nice hotel and think, wow, must be nice. Like they'll see, the typical douchebag guy driving the fast car down the road and they'll look at that and be like amazed and wow, and really separate themselves, quote unquote, energetically from it. I try to stay away from doing that because I think that reinforces a belief that that could never be you. And I know how powerful the mind is. And if you know that if you alter the way you think, you alter the way you act, and you can literally just bend reality, then to me, it makes sense to do that in all the things, even in the things that seem really unrealistic and unattainable, even in the things that you don't even care to achieve. I actually think that's the biggest cheat code. Your aspirations need to be so insane so your actions are living up to this insane standard, and therefore you end up achieving things that you didn't even think were on the table. That's a cheat code. To me, the belief that you can do, achieve, or make more is the most powerful step. And to do that, you want to stop separating yourself from wealth. And that doesn't mean to go out there and spend and make poor money decisions. But what it means is to not think in lack and get comfortable with the idea that you deserve money and there's a lot of money out there for you. Being raised to fear money and to feel shame around money makes you live with constant guilt, hesitation, and if you never fix it, chronic under-earning. And I didn't realize how powerful this was when I was spending money, even on things that were necessities, for example. But we'll get into all of that stuff. What you need is to remind yourself every single day that money isn't the reward of suffering, period. I thought for the majority of my life that pure exhaustion that you get from grinding and hustling is what will bring you money. This is a very common belief that many people have, and it's actually the hardest one to break because even though I know that now and the life I live is a representation of that, I still struggle to stop myself from grinding and hustling in order to feel that safety, that comfort that you know of, right? Especially, again, if you grew up watching your parents work tirelessly to pay the bills and to do things, you start to believe that this action is required to stay alive. But this is not the case. And the reason it's really detrimental, especially in our day and age, is because when you are presented with really efficient, powerful ways to make money, let's say through the internet or through AI that you're not used to seeing, you start to feel that if you earn money effortlessly, it's a scam or you feel icky about it, right? I built a multi-six-figure freelance business in 18 months and it could have took me half the time. The reason it took me so long, now that I look back, there's a couple, but I would say definitely in the top 3 was my belief about making money. I felt that if I was charging my client, let's say $3,000, I had to hustle to my wit's end to earn that $3,000. Whereas the truth is, if the work that I do takes them 5 minutes, but makes them $10,000, then them paying me $2,000, $3,000 is valuable, right? I really had to make that switch. Obviously, that happened through acquiring more skills, getting good at what I do, but that belief was important because if I wasn't able to say those numbers and allow my body genuinely to feel okay with charging those numbers and not feeling like I had to overwork myself, I would have stayed stuck in that same cycle where a client would ask me what my rates were and then immediately my body would clench and I would just say something really, really low or not worth it. And then I would resent myself for that when I was hustling to the bone to do this work that I actually probably should have charged more for. So that was belief number 1. Belief number 2 is that spending money is irresponsible. It sounds insane when I say it out loud now. And maybe even when you're listening to this, you're like, I believe that. But yeah, it does sound insane because it's true, right? Oftentimes we live with this idea that spending money on everything, even things that are good for us, that nurture us, is wrong. This idea that you need to shrink yourself in order to gain wealth is exactly what is stopping you from having a better relationship with money and growing your wealth, right? Yes, you need to save money and invest it for the future, but that is only going to do so much for you. And also there's no guarantee about the future as well, right? In order to do that, you need to expand your here and now, investing in your health, investing in your knowledge, your assets, etc. More practically, things like buying whole foods to ensure that you're nourishing your body with food that's going to keep you healthy. I noticed that if I spent a little bit extra on groceries because I decided to buy the good meat that I knew would be better for me, I would feel this closing in, this pit in my stomach. When I became self-aware about that, I started to, whenever I would buy healthy food in the future, I would redirect the feeling to a different emotion. Okay, I'm feeling a little bit sus about this expensive meat that I'm buying or this expensive vegetable that I'm buying, but I know that it's going to nourish me, and having a nourished, healthy body is going to allow me to show up better in the world, which is ultimately going to allow me to expand and build my wealth. So in those small little things, I would constantly check in with myself. And a big thing that I like to tilt myself into quote unquote new energy is to buy an expensive thing. So whenever I want to ascend, I feel like, okay, I reached a level, I've been in this place, I've been feeling comfortable with it, it's time to expand, it's time to grow. I will buy an expensive thing to put me in that new version of myself. Expensive in relation to what I think is expensive based on my earnings, my budget, and what I normally allow myself to buy, right? And then each of these pieces that I buy that are quote unquote up for the next level also become a little piece of memorabilia on my journey of building wealth and growing my income. And then another belief that kept me broke as well, that I think a lot of women can relate to, is that wanting more is greedy, and being okay with less or being okay with not making that much money is virtuous, or it makes you more humble, let's say. The thing is, wanting more does not make you ungrateful. You can be grateful and want more. And personally, I have a lot of people, things, ideas, projects that I want to put into the world, that I want to create. And my barrier to doing that, aside from networking, is money. I need to have the capital to do these things. So for me, in order to make the impact that I want, in order for me to do the things that I want that, people will be like, oh, that's a good use of money, I need to make more of it. I think that's also just another good reframe. But aside from all of that, like even if you don't want to do charitable things, which you're not required to do, wanting to live an abundant life is okay, period. You don't have to give an explanation for that. I think obviously on a scale, you don't want to lean too much to one side. While I think extreme frugality is not good, extreme luxury and materialism and consumerism is also not good. But leaning towards wanting more in and of itself is completely okay. And I used to, especially in the beginning of my journey as a freelancer, tell myself, oh, I don't even care care about making more money. I don't care that meanwhile I'm making 2K, 3K a month. I don't care about making 10K a month. I don't care about doing XYZ. When I did, one, I had a limiting belief that I couldn't, but I was also just trying to convince myself that because I had this fake desire that I was humble, I was more virtuous, and I didn't care about things. And I did. And I'm making this because I think that it's important to check in with yourself as you and not as beliefs that were just embedded into you over time that could be stopping you from getting on your path to making more money or just aligning with who you're meant to be in this world. It wasn't until I changed how I thought about money and how I perceived it, and I got rid of these beliefs, that it changed how I made it, as I kind of slightly mentioned before. So when I graduated university, I saw my student debt and I saw my bank account and I said, this does not add up. How am I going to get out of this? I read the book Broke Millennial, and then I started budgeting. I was a very serious budgeter, which was good. It's good to know the skill of budgeting. And I'm not here to say that you don't need to budget, you don't need to save, like all the basics. Yes, do those, right? But there comes a point where budgeting can only do so much. If you want to earn more, you have to make new actions. You can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a new outcome. You got to do something different, right? So what actually fixed my bank account was investing in my skills. So constantly learning, not just skills that I offer to clients, but just my knowledge in general. So what more can I learn about myself, about life, etc.? And that starts with investing in yourself. Maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's therapy, maybe it's personal trainer. All of these things give you new knowledge, which allow you to show up differently. But yes, specifically skills that compound. So high ticket skills that people will constantly need. So I learned direct response marketing. Direct response marketing is just a term for saying marketing that pushes people to a direct action. So not pop-ups and billboards that you're used to seeing, but more so ads that you then maybe click on and purchase from, because you can actually track all of that. So direct response marketing is really powerful because there's data. So they can see, oh, this gave us this amount of money. And if you're able to optimize how much money they get from those actions, i.e. those direct response marketing skills, people will pay you a lot of money for it, right? And they pay me, let's say, up to $10,000 a month on retainer to make ads. And those same ads have then made brands millions of dollars. So those ads can take me anywhere from 10 minutes to maybe an hour to make. If there are many other avenues, but hopefully it's just making you think more about, okay, this is valuable. And this will always be a thing. People are always going to be trying to get people to buy things. So you just need to be able to be curious and know when to shift, when to pivot, what to learn and how to learn. Since I started 4 years ago, ChatGPT wasn't a thing then. Now I am really good at AI prompting for different aspects of direct response marketing. I've learned conversion rate optimization, just a range of things when I just only started with copywriting. And that's purely because I was curious and I invested in my learning. Again, invest in mentors who've done it before. I often get people ask me, oh, I don't know if I should make this choice. This person in my life said, don't do this, don't do that. Well, is the person that's telling you that been in the exact position you want to be in? That's often a mistake people make. Get advice from someone who's in your industry, let's say. But if they're not doing the job or the specific role or freelancing like you want to in the capacity that you want, if you would want a life similar to theirs, there's no point on taking their advice to a T. You want to follow your intuition, pray, etc., do those things, but learn to look for people who have the specific scenario, situation that you want, and then take advice only from them. You invest in that and finding that and getting those answers. Because again, that also helped me. I tried a lot of different side hustles and did a bunch of things, and I was able to directly see, okay, I don't want this, I want that, this is what I would prefer, and then act accordingly. Also, what helped my bank account was saying yes to temporary discomfort, but no to unnecessary suffering. So just generally knowing when it's time to be disciplined with your money and when it's time to spend it, or when you've done your part. For example, when I was moving to London, I think it's similar to maybe New York, maybe everywhere is like this now, but it was my first time moving out on my own. So I heard from a lot of people that in London, it's really hard to get an apartment. You have to have 6 months to 12 months rent upfront, literally cash. So before I moved, and I decided to move probably like 4 months before I got my visa started, I saved 6 months rent, right? Which one, because CAD to pounds conversion is crazy, that was like double the money, right? So I really had to, in that moment, allow myself to feel discomfort in that time where I had to be really disciplined and basically follow budget to a T, make sure I was saving for my future self, and then use that muscle when I got here. So I didn't get here and then immediately just start spending and not budgeting, but thinking, okay, this is how much I earn. This is how much I can spend frivolously. This is how much I need to put away to save so I can upkeep this amount in my savings and give myself that security. Again, freelancing taught me that, but I also learned that through little increments before I made that big move. So even prior to moving, I wanted to build my savings. I wanted to do all these things. I needed to build up that discipline and learn how to be okay with a little bit of discomfort. And then lastly, probably most importantly, I had to learn how to move in abundance and not lack, and see that there was just constant abundance around me and in the world and opportunities. Someone else getting an opportunity or someone else making money in a different capacity was proof that I actually could make more and that there was more out there for me, and not proof that there was a lack of, or it meant that I couldn't do that, or that was something being taken from me, because that's often the mentality you have if you have poor money beliefs. So just constantly reminding myself that. And every time I felt those thoughts come in my head, or I felt the weird feeling in my stomach, whenever I saw something and immediately thought scarcity rather than abundance, I would stop that thought and just reaffirm to myself what I was seeing or what that actually meant in reality. So it's really just kind of babying yourself in a way. And I pretty much say this in all of my videos, because that inner self-talk and realization, like true self-awareness, but then acting on that, is what's going to help you ascend in every area. So that's what led me into freelancing. This was good because it allowed me to see how money was made, how money was flowing in the world. Freelancing, though, didn't just give me income. It taught me how to think in value, not time, as I mentioned before. So rather than charging for the amount of hours that I worked, I started to think about, oh, okay, how much value can I bring to this company? If I can bring more value to this company, if I can get my hands in more of their pots and really make their business money, I can make more money. And it doesn't matter how long I work to make them that money. I really began to understand the essence of that when I achieved it through freelancing. Freelancing also taught me how to structure my days around my energy, because it's one thing to understand, okay, the value of your time when your time is most valuable, if that makes sense. So doing harder tasks or doing your most creative task in the morning or in the night when you know your brain is wired for that task, and learning how to group tasks together. It also taught me about thinking long term, for example, because as a freelancer, especially in the beginning days, you feel very naked, kind of. It's like, I'm just a little baby out here making money. You feel sometimes like you're going to lose clients and everything will fall apart. But really, it's no different from a 9 to 5. Obviously, if you work at a really good job, you'll get paid for a while if you lose your job. But in other jobs, you don't have that cushion, and then it might take 6 to 12 months to get a job. Whereas if you're a freelancer, you can get a client like this, especially if you have a really good portfolio and have building up your network in the industry, which leads to my next point, that freelancing also taught me about leverage. Building leverage, how can I create better connections, put myself in better positions to take luck out of the equation and be valuable to someone aside from just knowing a service. And in life in general, aside from freelancing, this is important. How can you take luck out of the equation? Doing small things can greatly impact your life and put you in positions that you would simply not be in to build wealth. Like, for example, I moved from Canada to London, United Kingdom. It was spontaneous, but also very calculated, because I knew that it would elevate me in ways mentally, physically, financially that I literally could not where I was living before, right? It expands my network, which allows me to create more quote unquote luck or opportunities in my life, which ultimately give me leverage in different areas. And freelancing also taught me that I don't need anyone else to get paid. There didn't need to be a middleman. I could go out to a business, I could go to a founder, I could connect with someone and help them solve their problem and earn money because it's flowing, and I can attract it and attain it and keep it, right? So you don't need to shrink your desires or punish yourself to be wise or to make more. You just need to invest in yourself and build systems that allow you to constantly think and act in abundance in a responsible way that's not teetering the balance too much. And I promise it'll help you go get paid. Bye.